Greetings everyone, I hope you're well and having a great day. I'm Donovan and welcome to Burnout and Brake Stuff. This week's BBS video will be covering a teardown on our Ramcharger's 440. We're going to get in there and do some inspecting and some repairs and get a new timing set installed, and we'll go from there. I just want to thank everyone for tuning in. I appreciate everyone who likes, shares, subscribes, and objectively comments. So let's get into this video. I hope everyone enjoys it. I hope everyone has a great day. After running the engine and shutting it down to check for leaks, oil pump is successfully repaired, no more leaks. Sat for several days now, nothing up from under it. The oil pan's not leaking, and I don't have any leak around the rear main seal. However, the ARP studs are too short compared to the factory ones, and they don't seal into the head well. So I'm going to go back to the grade 5 factory length studs with some high temperature RTV on them, and I'm going to go that route. So for now, I want to go ahead and get the coolant drained out of it and get the front dress off the engine so I can look at the timing chain. I want to make sure that that's good. With our cooling system drained, our headers and studs removed, now we're ready to remove upper and lower hoses and get the heat exchanger out of the way so we can gain access to our front drive assembly and get down to that timing set. Let's get to it. With our heat exchanger out of the way, upper and lower radiator hoses out of the way, next up we're going to go ahead and remove all of our front drive accessories. We're going to remove our 100 amp alternator, our RV2 AC compressor, upper and lower pulley, and our idler pulley. So let's get to it. With that Rube Goldberg contraption removed from the front of the engine, believe it or not, there's something that resembles an engine back there. Next up will be our water pump housing. Let's get that out of the way, and that will get us one step closer to getting our timing, exposing our timing cover. With our water pump housing removed, next thing I'm going to do is remove the carburetor, coil, and intake manifold, as I need to replace that gasket as well. So let's get to it. With our carburetor, coil, ignition wires, and the top of the engine cleaned up, the next thing I want to do is use a vacuum cleaner to clean off any type of small debris that lays around the intake manifold. I'm trying to prevent any amount of debris from falling down in the intake ports, and once I get the valley pen gasket out, the least amount of garbage that falls down in the engine, the better. So I'm going to use this vacuum and get to it. But nobody wants to hear that, so I'll, spare everyone. I don't even want to listen to it. With all the debris vacuumed away from our intake manifold, next thing I'm going to do is get that manifold off there. Let's do that. With our intake manifold gasket, intake manifold, and valley pan gasket removed, I'm going to use my light here and look down through this window and see it is as I suspected. The timing set has been changed. I figured it would have been, since the gaskets here were not factory gaskets around the intake manifold, the timing cover the oil pan, and the brass core plugs. That led me to believe that this engine has been apart before, as well as now I can see it has composite head gaskets. I believe these would have had steel shim head gaskets from the factory. So next up, in order to line the timing marks up on the gear and cam gear and crank gear, I'm going to rotate the engine around to number 6 top dead center firing. Now, why would I rotate it around to top dead center for number 6 firing, but not number 1 in order to line up the timing marks? If I do that, top dead center number 1 firing, the timing marks will be 180 degrees out from one another. The crank gear timing mark will be at the top, and the cam gear, the timing mark will be up at the top instead of down at the bottom, so they won't be nose to nose the way they should be. That's what I'm up to. With our number 1 spark plug wire identified on the body of the rotor here, go ahead and rotate the engine around with this 1¼ inch socket. We'll pass number 1, and we have number 6 also marked on here, and that's where we're headed. Coming up on number 6, there's our timing mark. Let's get it right up on 0. With our distributor marked at the number 6 top dead center firing, the rotor's on the number 6 position. The oil has already been drained from the pan, and the dipstick has been removed from the pan, dipstick tube. Next up, we're going to take the oil pan off. In order to do so, we're just going to buzz the pan bolts off, obviously. But a tip is to leave a couple of them loose in there, as prying the pan off, the pan doesn't hit the floor. With the oil pan removed and inspecting the oil pan, fortunately, it's not full of sludge. Also, down in the valley of the engine, doesn't look like bed liner. So I'm thankful that someone took the time to change the oil fairly frequently. So, that being said, next up, use our impact. We're going to bust that fastener out of the damper there, and then we're going to use a combination steering wheel damper puller to remove the damper. I don't recommend jaw pullers, clamps, pullers for getting on the outside of the inertia ring here. There's a rubber insulator that goes between the center of the damper and the inertia ring. Sometimes these can pull the outer ring off the damper. So I stay away from those. Ask me how I know, right? Well, let's get this off of here. With the washer removed from our crank bolt and our crank bolt reinstalled with a small amount of lubricant on the threads, I don't bottom it out, but I put it in there long enough to where it has good thread engagement to where a puller won't damage the threads. I've already installed the puller, and I'm going to give you 2 tips that'll help your puller last a lifetime. First tip, don't loan it to anyone. I think that's good advice. The next tip is to put lubricant on the threads of the center here and then you can go ahead and tighten her down. With our damper out of the way and our water pump housing gaskets cleaned off, let's get our timing cover off. basically what I would have expected to see. I'm glad at some point somebody changed it. They didn't run it all these years like our 400 and our Road Runner, 121,000 miles on it, and it still had the factory aluminum nylon covered gear on the cam. Let's get a new chain installed, new timing set. After cleaning off our timing gear here, how well do those timing marks line up with one another? I think there's some slop in that. There's the dot on the cam, and we look down below on the crank gear, that dot's over there to the left. They kind of missed one another. All right, let's see if we can improve that. With our timing marks lined up on our timing set, I reinstalled the timing cover as such. And reinstalled our damper. Now, 0 is right there on the timing tab. 0 happens to be passed. So after scratching my head a little bit and rummaging around my puzzle palace of parts, I figured it might have been the opportunity. The inertia ring had turned, and in fact it had. We're basically lined up at 0 by just holding that up on there. And what I'm going to do is take a punch and I'm going to put a mark here on my replacement damper, making sure that my timing mark stays lined up, that the inertia ring hasn't moved on either side of the hub where it belongs. So, problem solved. On to the next step. With our old timing set removed and our gasket surfaces all cleaned up, we're going to install a Howard's part number 94335 billet geared double roller timing set. Comes in at just under $126. We've tried using more economical timing sets, but generally I've found the chain seems to be as loose as the old one. So that's why I stick with quality parts. Pay for it once, do it right the first time, instead of doing it over. Timing cover is all cleaned up, needs a new seal. Bought Felpro's timing cover kit, TCS 12460-2, less than 15 bucks. Comes with all the gaskets and a new seal. So let's get it installed. With our new timing set installed, I've already cleaned out the end of the cam, the threads, dried them out. Same thing for the cam bolt. I'm going to use some Loctite on my cam bolt, and then I'm going to torque it down to 50 foot-pounds as per manufacturer's specifications. And finally, before reinstalling the timing cover, I feel it's important to lubricate the timing chain. There's a bunch of little rollers inside of there, and I don't want to start this engine with those rollers being dry. I feel like that's a good tech tip. So now we need to get our timing cover back on here, our damper back in there. We'll be all set to go. On to the next thing. Before installing the timing cover, I just wanted to stop back by and get a close-up shot of our new timing set installation. And I just wanted to show how taut we are now. It's probably going to stretch almost instantly on startup, so I've been told. I don't really know. I've never just installed one and started it and then pulled it all back apart to see how much the timing set stretches. Anyway, just wanted to show that. Nice and taut.